Good morning, guys. So I request all the participants to rename your self by the college name, whatever you have provided, because it would be helpful for us to take the attendance. Please rename yourself. I want everyone's name. If it is not renamed within 2 minutes, I'm going to remove you from the meeting. So we are going to start the webinar within another 5 minutes.
Good morning, dear students. Am I audible? Okay, thank you, sir. Dear students, before the program starts, everyone follow this instruction carefully. Mute your mic. Don't interrupt the session in the mid. If you have any queries, doubts, or any questions like that, you can put it in the chat box, but don't interrupt the session in mid. Don't log out during the session. Session may take around 1 hour. It may take up to 11. So till that, you're not supposed to log out from the session. Keep it in your mind. Bhavesh sir, am I audible? Hello, Bhavesh sir, am I audible?
Hello.
Sir, you are audible.
Okay. Hi, Professor Chatra. Sorry, I was not able to
No,
unmute
no, no,
myself.
no. There was some glitches in the host profiles.
Right. Okay. So now it's done.
Sir, can we start a session?
Yes, please.
You can start now. Sir, can you share the screen? Can we see that?
Good morning, dear students. As I already said that before the program starts, do follow the below instruction. I repeat once again, mute your mic. Don't interrupt the session in the mid. For any doubts or queries, put a question in the chat box or you can raise a hand in the chat box itself. Don't log out during the session. You have to follow this many instructions carefully.
Sir, you can start the session, sir. Madam.
Yes.
You are supposed to invite her.
Yes, sir.
Sir, just a second. We'll just invite you, sir. So, your screen is visible, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it is often the small steps, not the gain leaps, that brings about the most lasting change, as said by Stephen Richards. Good morning, one and all. I, Chaitra V, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce and Management, Sheshadipuram Degree College, Mysore. It's my privilege to welcome you all for today's virtual power seminar on the topic Personality Development in Firstly, I would like to introduce today's resource person, Mr. Bhavesh Patel. Mr. Bhavesh Patel, Global HR Leader, Startup Advisor, and Change Advocate, My Greenhorn. He is a collaborative professional with a successful track record of working with senior leadership globally to improve business results through people and HR solutions. Mr. Bhavesh Patel, having extensive experience in talent development, talent acquisition, talent management, strategies, talent retention, learning and development process, redesign, and organization effectiveness effort globally. He has successfully led high impact and strategic change management initiatives in startup culture focused on formulation of policies, driving HR professional transformations, cultural change, strengthening people leader effectiveness, building leadership pipelines, organization design, among others. His specialties include building and leading the strong process-oriented HR delivery organization. It's really our pleasure to have you as a resource person, sir. My warm welcome to you for the session.
Thanks.
And
Thanks. Sorry.
And I extend my warm word of welcome to our below principal, Professor Soumya Irupati, for the session. Welcome you, ma'am. I also welcome Mr. Prajwal Vasista, ICT Regional Coordinator for the session. Welcome you, sir. I would like to welcome all my dear students for the session. Welcome you all. I request Mr. Bhavesh Patel to take over the session.
Thanks, Professor Chatra, and thanks for the warm welcome. It's been a privilege, and I mean, I see about 132 students. Some of them are also in the waiting room, so I'm guessing the number is going to increase. So I'll give you a quick context in terms of what we're going to do. I got to hear from Prajwal that I would be addressing students who are just about to get into their college. So the first year students obviously will want to know something which is very, very pragmatic, things which are very useful in terms of building their education and then obviously taking their chart towards moving into a corporate sector. So I'm going to share my experiences. And I also thought that I'm not going to keep the slides very heavy. So what you will see in the next few minutes that I'm going to talk about is largely going to be in lines of practical observations of what personality development is, and I'll talk about that. So before that, I just want a confirmation if everybody can see my screen.
It is visible, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So moving on. Okay. So as I was saying, I mean, who am I is important. So the name is Bhavesh Patel. I think Professor Chaitra also gave a pretty nice introduction, and thanks for that. Stating in terms of what I've done. Now, 20 years, I wish I was 20 years old. I'm not. 20 years here denotes the years of experience that I've spent working with large organizations. So I worked with the likes of GE, IBM, Capgemini, Wipro, CGI. I've also worked with a couple of startups. And that's the kind of experience that I bring through. Those experiences have been in the area of HR, consulting, assignments, mentoring, talent acquisition, leadership. Right now, in the last couple of years, I've also taken up mentorship to startups. So there are 4 to 5 startups that I mentor in terms of how their growth strategy should be, what are some of the aspects that they should be focusing on, and so on and so forth. So that's about me. Now, what's important is for us to discuss what I'm going to talk about today, right? I mean, there are 140 circa students who are here. So what are we going to talk about is largely on personality development, but I also thought it's important for us to kind of list down some of the objectives which I feel is important for each one of you to go through, mull over it, and then perhaps take some learnings out of today's discussion. I know it's Saturday. I know it's relatively early morning, but I hope that in the next 30 to 45 minutes, there will be few tips or some experiences from my life that I can share with you, which will help you in your long journey, that I can assure you. So the first part is personal development. What we will try and do is try and understand what personality development is all about. I mean, I'm sure you would have heard lots of definitions. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. Tell you what, in a nutshell, personality development is all about. How do you construe a personality? how do you develop a persona, and so on and so forth. We'll also touch upon the types of personality. So each of us bring a different version of ourselves, right? Some of us are aggressive, some of us are passive, some are very, very creative. So we'll also see what are the different types of personality that people have, and is it possible for, let's say, somebody like a me to change personalities as I move along, as I grow in my career, as I move in my life, and so on and so forth. So we'll touch upon that as well. There are a lot of myths as well. A lot of people who talk about personality development, and I've heard a lot of coaches as well talking about some other things which are sure shot. But I'm going to touch upon a few myths that I feel people talk about. All of us who perhaps don't know much about personality development think that if you do this, this is possible. So I'm going to touch upon some of those myths of what personality development is not about. Following which, there'll be a small session on the Johari window, and this is going to be an extremely interesting. Some of you might already be aware of it. For those of you who are not aware of the Johari window, you will get to know how can that model actually help you develop your persona, develop your overall belongingness to the society, to the organization, to the workplace that you are a part of. Then I'm going to talk about some of the tips that I feel has helped me in the past. And as I said, I've spent about 20 years in the industry. I've met lakhs and lakhs of students. I've met a lot of professionals, a lot of leaders. So basis the gatherings that I've managed to garner in the last 20 years, I'm going to share some of those tips, which I feel are extremely key for you to build a winning persona. And last, I know all of you hate homework, so do I. But I'm going to leave you with a few things that I feel are important. Nobody's going to check this homework for you. That's the difference. Having said that, if you look at some of these aspects, and if you really are keen on developing your persona, it is going to be important for you to kind of follow some of those checklist items that I've called out in the last slide. Right. So with this, I'll move on. Now, what does this slide say? I mean, I'm afraid I am not able to see you or hear from you, but what it essentially means is what I see in the mirror, right, is who I really am. Now, this typically construes is we are the best judge of ourselves, right? Today, we might want to portray ourselves as somebody else when we go out in the world. I might be a shy person, but when I go out in the world, I want to showcase myself as somebody who's an extroverted character, somebody who is very, very confident, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, deep within myself, I'm aware of what are my white spaces, what are the things that I need to work upon. In addition to that, I'm also aware of what are some of my innate strengths. So personality development is all about trying to work upon your skills that you think are the best in class. Also realize where are some of the aspects that you lack upon, and keep developing yourself as you move along, right? And if you were to and I told you that I'll be sharing some of the examples from my own life. And to be honest, when I passed out of college, I did my MBA from XLRI. Till that time, and I was about 23 years old, and whenever I talk to people, whenever I talk to my teams, I talk to different people, I don't hesitate in telling them that, you know what, till about the age of 23, I could not, and I mean it when I say it, I could not construct a sentence of proper English. Wipro happened to be my first place where I went for an interview. I went there. It was a 50 odd candidates who were sitting in the room, and Murphy's law, when you are scared the most is when you get picked the first. So the recruiter that was sitting there, all of a sudden in the crowd says, "Why don't you stand up and talk to us about your experience?" And I realized that if I want to really make a mark in my career, that shade of underconfidence is not going to work. That's when this particular aspect of somebody who told me that, you know what, you should look at yourself in the mirror, if not more, at least 1 minute every day. if not anything, when you're brushing perhaps in the morning. And I do that. It's been about 20 odd years that I've been doing that. That's one practice in my life that I've never changed. And I thank that mentor who told me this, which is look at yourself every morning in the mirror, ask yourself who you really are. And the moment you get answers, you will know which are the aspects that you want to continue working towards, which are your strengths. You will also get to know some of the aspects which you are not good about. So what I knew 20 years back then was that I am good at subject matter. I can write pretty well. So I needed to hone on those skills. I also knew when I looked into the mirror 20 years ago is that I am not confident at all. I feel shy and reserved when I'm talking to strangers. I feel scared of my communication skills ability in terms of English language. So those are the skills that I wanted to work upon. And then I also had the third element of it, which is what do your friends, family, people who don't know you talk about? And I'm going to touch upon that in the Johari window. So that's going to be important. Now, moving on, I spoke about understanding personality development. So let's understand what personality development is all about, right? It is a combination of a lot of factors. I've tried putting in a mathematical formula. I'm not good at maths, by the way, but I just thought it's going to be interesting for students to understand some more formulas. If not, you're already bored of it. But to me, personality development is a combination of a lot of factors. It starts with physical attitude, how I walk, how I present myself, how I portray, how my verbal cues are. By verbal, no, sorry, non-verbal cues are. By non-verbal cues, I mean, do I look at somebody in the eye when I talk? Do I sound confident in my voice modulation, and so on and so forth? So a lot of physical attributes or the way you carry yourself physically to an external person is one part of the personality that you have. The other, which is again very, very important, is the mental side of it. Now, a lot of it is about power dressing. A lot of it is about how you carry yourself, how somebody sees you when you walk into a room full of strangers, and so on and so forth. But a lot of this is mental as well. And I gave you my example of saying that while perhaps 20 years ago when I went for that Wipro discussion, I was dressed appropriately. I was dressed in a pretty nice jacket that I was wearing. But where I lacked was the mental part of it. I was inside scared of who I am. I was inside scared of how will people perceive me. So a lot of it is also about how you are dealing with your own persona from a mental attitude perspective. Now, emotional attitude becomes again very, very critical. And that's again another aspect of personality, which everybody needs to hone upon. So now, how am I emotionally? I mean, do I react to situations when things are not going right? Do I become an overexcited person when things are going right? So a lot of how you carry yourself from an emotional standpoint also becomes important. And to make it a little clear, maybe let me give you an example. And everybody follows cricket here. I'm sure there's nobody in this session who does not know cricket. So if you look at characteristics and if you look at personas, right, you will come across several personas of different people. Let me take an example of Mahendra Singh Dhoni, right? Dhoni, his persona, his emotional quotient is of a leader. He doesn't want to express himself and kind of portray what he's really feeling, because that's what he thinks is going to work his charm. Now, exact opposite of that would be, let's say, a Virat Kohli, right? He wears a childlike attitude. His emotional quotient is very high. You could see the frustration, the anguish, the laughter, the childlike behavior and whatnot in a Virat Kohli. I mean, can we quantify who's right and who's wrong? The answer is no. It all depends on what you want to portray from a personality perspective. So both of them are amazing personalities. Both of them are personalities that at least everybody tries to emulate. And why not? It all depends on which side of the emotional persona do you resonate with. And it's always important about one, knowing who you are, and two, trying to work upon what you want to be. Then comes the set of values. Now, why values? Values also because it differs from geography to geography. And when I say geography, there are a lot of intricate values that people are born with, right? If you look at Indians, for example, Indians are of a servitude attitude wherein we feel obliged when we look at a stranger. We want to smile at them. We want to welcome our guests. We want to be very, very courteous, polite as a traditional way of looking at things. Whereas, let's say if you meet an Australian for that matter, right? An Australian will not have those nuances of saying that, you know what, I mean, that's okay. Everybody's chill, everybody's cool. Even if guests are coming to my house, does not mean that I have to change what I'm wearing. I could be sitting in a Bermuda and I should be very, very okay with my guests coming in, which will not be in the case of an Indian family. That an Indian family would want to clean up their house, would want to dress appropriately, dress well when guests are coming. So a lot of values of what is hereditary also makes a difference in our overall personality. Interests, again, I spoke about the whole element of what interests you, right? Which are some of the areas that you want to work towards, and that becomes a part of the persona. Last but not the least, and to me, one of the most important aspect is the motivation factor. What motivates you? Uh, does a childlike attitude of Virat Kohli gives you a sense of motivation that, you know what, it's brilliant to wear your heart on your sleeve. It's brilliant for people to know that you are somebody who is not hiding his or her emotions. You are somebody who is out there. Vis-a-vis somebody else's motivation factor could be donning a person of a Dhoni, saying that, you know what, I want to come across, since I'm the captain of the team, I want to come across as a calm person who knows how to carry himself or herself, right? Who does not want to get swayed by emotions, get angry, get edgy, get abusive, or whatnot. Motivation could also be in terms of which area, and let me try and correlate this to your career, which you will take up in 3, 4, 5 years down the line. I could be motivated by having a fancy office. I could be motivated by having an office that serves, let's say, liquor or juices or bean bags in the office. Then I would I'd more kind of want to work towards product development organizations, wanting to work with startups and whatnot. Or if my motivation factor is to have a more stable job, a more secure job, then I will start looking at working towards my personality, which will be more suited to, let's say, a large IT firm. It could be an Infosys, or it could be a Wipro or a GE, or things of those sorts. So this combination of physical, mental, emotional, what your values are, what your interests are, and what motivates you, kind of put together comprises of what your personality is all about. So moving on, I spoke about personality types, but before that, I wanted to also touch upon how is personality determined, right? What is the core fundamentals of my personality? Emotional traits, right? How I deal with my emotions becomes a part of my personality. Now, how I am intellectually, am I somebody who reads a lot and thus I know a lot? Am I somebody who is very, very good at gathering information, is very good at observing things, is very good at listening to people, and thereby my knowledge is gained? I could be somebody who watches a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of blogs, and so on and so forth. And that's how I keep myself intellectually occupied to be able to demonstrate my persona. Last but not the least, how am I socially? Am I socially awkward? Am I somebody who takes a lot of time to mingle with new people? Or am I somebody who is absolutely okay to kind of walk into a room full of new people and be able to impress upon who am I? Now, all these traits are determined by heredity. Heredity would largely mean where I hail from. I could be hailing from a small village wherein all these things did not take precedence and it took time for me. And the most important part is the environment. I could be, again, somebody who has grown in an environment from, let's say, a very, very rural area, but very soon in my uh, career or life, I was put into a big school, a big institution, a big university where I started interacting, mingling with my environment around, and that actually changed me. In my case, my heredity was of a person who perhaps came from a very, very humble beginning, did not get an opportunity to study in English medium for a long, long time. And then there were certain facets of which I did not improve or could not improve upon. But then the environment which I looked around kind of ensured that I work towards my skills. I honed them and eventually work towards improving myself as an overall personality. Now, I spoke about Dhoni and Virat's example, but there are lots of different characteristics also. And while I may not have time to kind of deep dive into everybody and every particular personality, I'm just going to talk about some of the aspects. And what you should do in your mind right now is to try and see if you can think of somebody. It could be your friend, it could be your teacher, it could be your somebody that you know, or it could be an eminent personality or a sports person, right? Now, one kind of personality is that of a perfectionist, a person who's realistic, a person who's conscientious, a person who's principled. Think of somebody who you think will fit this bill. Moving on, then there are another personality types which are of helpers. Helpers are people who are typically concerned about everybody around, who like nurturing people, who like motivating everybody around, who are very, very sensitive to things. So your folks could be people who are sensitive and caring, not just for human beings, but let's say for animals and so on and so forth. So that's another personality type that you will see in people around you. The third personality type that you will see around you is achievers. Now, achievers are a set of people who are very, very energetic. They are self-assured. They are go-getters who want to ensure that whatever they have set out for will get happen by hook or by crook, and they will not leave any stone unturned till the time they meet their final objective. There are characteristics of people in terms of personality who are romantics, people who are warm, who are sensitive, who are perceptive, to looking at how people look at them, how people judge them, how people are perceptive of the emotions that they are demonstrating to everybody around. Then there are questioners. I mean, I happen to be somebody who, to a large extent, falls in this category. People who are responsible, people who are trustworthy, but also people who question the status quo, people who are never happy with what has been told, who always have a point of view. Their questions never seem to end. They want to know more and more things about. So if these things are happening in this fashion, the question always from them will be, why can I not do it in the other way around? Why do we have to do it in this fashion? Then there are adventurers. Adventurers are largely people who are photographers, optimistic, lively, nature lovers. They get into a lot of adventure activities and build their career around it. There are asserters, people who are very, very direct, people sometimes who are not really taken in the right spirit, because they feel that why waste time beating around the bush? I can be very, very clear and concise about what I want to communicate. So they are asserters who are very direct, but they mean no harm. There are observers, which is the last category of people who are introverted, people who are curious, people who are insightful. So these are characteristics of every personality type. What you should do, as I said, is one, try and think of a person or a personality who you feel is related to this particular type. And also you should try and understand which personality type should or would you be falling in, and how would you want to change and perhaps adapt to some of the other personality types also in the future. Now, I spoke about myths, right? I spoke about some of the aspects that you will hear in a lot of articles, you will hear a lot of people talking about, but let me break the bubble. I'll be blunt enough to tell you that some of the things that have been spoken about in personal development does not really exist, right? One of them is it's for a certain class of people, and very often you will hear that, yeah, if you go to a fancy college, if you hail from a very posh environment, and that's when you talk about things like personal development and so on and so forth. It is not meant for people who perhaps can't communicate in English, who perhaps do not have a environment around them, who are not comfortable talking in the language, or let's say wearing a suit or whatnot. So that's a big myth, right? Personality development is for everybody. A personal development charter has to be created for everybody, irrespective of where you hail from, what you want to do in your career. And today, if you look at it, the world being so social, there are farmers, there are agriculturists, there are people who are selling milk and whatnot. Everybody is social. Everybody wants to develop a persona. Everybody wants to develop not just their persona, but also a persona of the brand that they carry, right? You will see lots of advertisements around every small item. That is nothing but brand building, right? And when you talk about yourself, building a brand for yourself also is extremely critical. The second thing that you will hear about is that a lot of people, a lot of gurus uh, tell you that read 10 books a month. If you start reading 10 books a month, you'll become successful. My view to that is not everybody likes reading, right? I am somebody who's got at least about 100 books in my uh, gallery, but I haven't read even a single book because every time I touch a book, 10 pages and I'm done. I am bored. I can't take forward. So what I'm trying to tell you is not that reading book is not good. Reading book is absolutely good. And if you can read 10 books a month, you will be successful is not true, is the point that I'm trying to make, which means that it has to be a continuous journey. It has to be a continuous exercise of pushing yourself to try and understand what works for you. For you, it might be a movie that works. For you, it might be listening to audio books that works. Or you could be a traditional person who thinks that, you know what, only when I read a book, and if you're good at that, continue doing that. But it's not that in order to develop your personality, the only thing that can help you is to read a book. It's not just reading a book, it's also about trying to figure out what works for you is what's important. Now, the other myth that you will keep hearing about is keep doing what you love and you will find success, which is not true, to be honest, right? Because such is the nature of the corporate environment. And while, yes, I'm talking about your corporate environment way too early in your career, you still have about 3 to 4 years before you get into the corporate life. But what you will realize very, very soon is while it's important to continue doing what you love, it's also important for you to try and gauge or try and read the room around you. I mean, I might like, for example, Java, and if I'm talking from a technical perspective, but if Java is not going to be the future of IT, then there is no point in me continuing to do Java and trying to think that, you know what, someday I will be successful. If you look at a lot of eminent personalities as well who have failed, uh, I'm not saying that it's not okay to keep going behind what you feel, but it's also important to know, read the room around you, and try and make a quick pivot to saying that, you know what, I've tried this for 5 times. Maybe the business of let's say running a particular product shop did not work. Can I look at doing something different and thereby find success? One seminar or book can change your life completely. I mean, this is just not possible, right? It's an ongoing journey. You will never come across anybody who will change your personality just by speaking to you in 30 minutes or just by giving you a book that can transform you completely. It's never a day process. It's never a month process. It's never a year process. It's a lifelong process. Your personality will keep changing, will keep getting better or worse for that matter, as long as you're living, as long as you're breathing. So every day that you survive, every day that you live, your personality goes through a seismic change. Your personality will either work for the better or will maybe do something that you really want to do. Last but not the least, that you should be joyful at all times to attract good things to your life. You will also hear that a very important part of personal development is being positive. I'm not saying that you should not be positive. It is very, very important to stay positive, but uh, to me, life is like share market, right? I mean, if some of you invest in share and all of you are going to be doing BCom, so it's very, very important for you to understand the commerce of how trading happens, right? Every bull run will have a bear. And what I mean by that is every high that you see in your life will definitely, you will see some points wherein your things are not going your way. You are not getting the required marks that you want in your assignments, in spite of studying much, much more uh, than your friend ended up getting more marks. So what I'm trying to allude to is the aspect that with every high, there will be a low. And while we celebrate the highs, while it's very, very important to be motivated, charged up, feel positive about things, it's also equally important to introspect. It's also very equally important to look inwards when the times are not right, to try and see why did this happen? Why did I not clear the assessment with the required marks in spite of me studying, in spite of me giving my best? to find answers within yourselves to know what did not work for you is equally important. So be positive, but also know that there will be times in your life when you will feel low, and that is the time when you need to grab yourself, pick up the bearings, and start moving towards what you really want to achieve. Right? I spoke about Johari window. Now, what's extremely critical about Johari window is the four quadrants, right? And the four quadrants largely is about how are some of the techniques that I can gather to improve my self-awareness. And I've been talking about it from the first slide, if you remember, right? The slide where I told you that what you see is who you really are. So which means the most important aspect, which nobody will tell you about, right? The only person who can tell you about that is you yourself, is which are the aspects that you are good at, which are the aspects that you are not good at. And Johari window touches upon that. But Johari window touches about self-awareness, not just from what you think of yourself, but an equally important aspect of what people think of you, right? I might think that I'm a very smart person who everybody is very, very happy listening to. I can talk to 500 people and they will be very, very attentive. Whereas all you know, the reality is that half of the people that I'm talking to are not even listening to me. All you know that they are in this seminar only because they have been asked to, and only because the attendance is getting monitored, and so on and so forth. So it's also very, very important to understand, read the room, get to know your audience, and reflect upon what are some of the aspects that you need to develop when you want to grow your persona. Now, these are the four quadrants, right? And the four quadrants largely talk about elements of four boxes. And if you look through this, it's very, very interesting, right? The first part, which is the green box, is about what is known to you and what is known to others. Things that you discuss at dinner parties, right? Things that people say about you, right? That Bhavesh is very talkative, right? I know it, people know it. So this is a common knowledge for me. I need to start ensuring if that happens in a positive fashion. Now, there are the other aspects, which is unknown to me, right? Unknown to me, but known to others. This is a very, very dangerous territory. Now, I might feel, and I give you an example, I might feel that I'm a brilliant speaker. When I talk, everybody stops their mobile phones and starts listening to me. Whereas what I'm not aware of is the aspect that perhaps people find me boring. Perhaps people find that the images that I'm presenting or the way that I'm articulating things are not really good and not helping anybody. So that becomes a question mark for me to understand, improve, work towards a skill so that I can bring this quadrant, which is the unknown to me quadrant, to the known quadrant, right? So this is a very dangerous territory that everybody needs to work upon, of what is known to you. You thinks, oh, sorry, unknown to you, what you think you have, but you don't know that the others are talking about this to you. Now, the third element, which is the gray area, is the element of your characteristics or your personality, which is unknown to others. Nobody knows it, but you know it deep down that you are this truly. So at weekends, you are an Elvis impersonator. I mean, all you know that you are a great bathroom singer who feels that I can beat even the BTS band. But since you are a shy person at heart, you never express, you've never sang in front of anybody else. So they don't know this side to you. So it's important for you then is to develop this side to be able to become confident and bring it out to the others so that this also comes in this area. Right? So the intent of everything is to bring it to the area which will hone your personality, is that what should be known to you is how people should also perceive you. I'll give you again my example. I mean, till date, right? I gave you some tidbits into my own story of how underconfident I was when I was a person getting into my college. And even after coming out of my college, I was very, very underconfident because of my ability to communicate in English language. Uh, till date, I am somebody who's an introvert. And whenever I talk to people about this, they start laughing. They said, you must be joking, right? But today, if you ask my spouse, if you ask my child, if you ask anybody who knows me really, really well, will tell you that, yes, Bhavesh is extremely shy. He takes time to become close to people that he does not know. That's my inner character. And remember, I told you that every time you walk out of your comfort zone, you bring in a personality that you don't want people to see. So the personality that I'm bringing out to my office, to the people that I meet, to the students that I mentor, is a personality that they want to see, is a personality that perhaps I don't want them to know unless they know me well, that I am at inner self a pretty shy and reserved person, right? And the fourth character is the fourth quadrant is the most critical stuff which you perhaps have not seen yet. So, which means life hasn't thrown this at you yet, which means there is a certain traits or certain characteristics which will get exposed to yourself and also to the outer world as and when you move along, as and when you start progressing in your journey towards being a graduate, in your journey towards being a postgraduate post that, and then in your journey towards being a successful entrepreneur or maybe a successful person who works in a large organization. So these are four quadrants which becomes extremely critical and important for you to know, and the other aspect for you to hone upon trying to develop on your skills, right? Now comes the part on what are some of the things that I do. And as I said, this is not from a management guru. This is just my experiences of what I feel uh, for a for an age which all of you are in becomes important and critical for you to know. What's most important is knowing yourself, right? And knowing yourself is again about looking yourself in the mirror, not lying to yourself. I mean, I might want to lie to myself that, you know what, I'm very confident, right? Because everybody says so. So when everybody says so, you start feeling that, yeah, when everybody's saying maybe that's the truth. But when I actually look into the mirror, I know deep down that I'm not confident, right? So that's an aspect which becomes the most critical element of how you look at yourself, how you know yourself, and a lot of introspection. Making a brand new statement, right? What is a brand new statement? You must have heard of SWOT. SWOT is nothing but strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For yourself, for your own benefit, what you should do is make a brand new statement, keep it in your diary. Don't show it to anybody if you are not confident of showing it to people. If you are nothing like it, you should show it to your friends, your mentors, and they will also give you a lot of tips on what is right and what is wrong. But try and dot the chart for yourself. What are my strengths? What are opportunities? What are some of the threats that I have? And what are my weaknesses? The second part is being positive. I did tell you about the myth of being positive, but it's very, very important that you become positive at uh, at phases of life which brings you down, right? By what I meant by the share market and analogy was that every time you become positive, there would be chances, there would be troughs wherein things will not work the way you want. But the only way to come out of that is also to try and get up from where you are, try and take charge of where you want to be, and draw out a plan of how you want to get where you want to get. Because being positive is all about the way you think, right? The way you think has a lot to do with how you act. If I'm thinking that, you know what, life is nothing is happening for me, I am studying a lot, I am working a lot, but still nothing is happening, it will continue to be that way. But if I mull over it for 2 days, I'd say, you know what, I deserve this 2 days to cry about things that did not work out, to introspect, to plan. But the third day I will get up and start working out my plan on what are some of the things which I did last year or last semester which did not work for me in terms of my studies. How do I change my way of studies so that I can deal with what happened last time, and also plan for how I want things to change in the next semester. The next is having an opinion. I did talk about me being in this category of a personality, of being somebody who's curious, somebody who's always opinionated. To me, having an opinion is very important. Being quiet is okay. A lot of people, and I know for a matter of fact that when I go to a Q&A session, very few of you will have questions, or perhaps none of you will have questions. But it's very, very important for you to shed away that skin of yours, which is non-inquisitive. You should be very, very interested, and no question is stupid. Every question is important. So have an opinion, challenge the status quo. It could possibly be that whatever your people around you are saying, sometimes you should have the courage to stand up and say, I'm sorry, I don't think this is right. I want to understand why are you saying in the fashion that you're saying. And then challenging the status quo is extremely important to build a personality. Now, the next point is being a good listener, right? There is a very good reason why God has given us one mouth and two ears. right? That's only and only because you need to listen, if not more, at least twice as much as you speak. Because only when you listen to people around you, it could be seniors, it could be juniors, it could be teachers, it could be mentors, it could be your personalities that you follow, unless you listen to them, unless you start absorbing, gathering some of the information that they're trying to demonstrate, you will not be able to work towards it. A lot of us, and when I started my career, this also was, excuse me, one of the aspects that I was not good at. The human psyche is such that this is you'll correlate this when I tell you that, let's say if a teacher is trying to ask you a question in a classroom, right? Before he or she completes the question, all of you would have raised your hands and wanting to answer what you feel is the right answer. That's where you're not a good listener. And the reason I say so is because you are listening with the intent of responding. That should never be the case. The listening ability for each one of us should be with the intent of absorbing. I should listen because I want to absorb. Only when you absorb is when you will get the real essence and then be able to respond. Don't listen only because you want to respond. Because if you do that, your response will a lot of times not make sense. I mean, if somebody is, let's say, shouting at me, and I'll give you a classic example of something that happened just about 2 days ago with me. We were I was driving with my family in the middle of a road. It was a busy road, right? And I was stuck in a signal. There was this uh, old family right behind me who kept honking and started shouting something. When obviously the male ego comes into picture, and all that I did was something which I should not have been. I mean, should not have been done. So I rolled down my window and I started shouting back at that old person. I said, you know what? What is wrong with you? You cannot fly. I mean, you cannot really jump the signal or start flying, because only when the people ahead of me will move is only when I can move. That guy also rolled down his glasses and says, I'm sorry, but my wife is not feeling well. I am rushing to the hospital. That changed my whole attitude, right? What I did was get down, start clearing traffic, and help that old gentleman to move through it. So what I'm trying to arrive at is, sometimes it's not about how or what the person is saying. It's also about your ability to listen to what is the real essence behind what the person is saying. So don't listen with the intent of responding. Listen with the intent of absorbing and then gathering the thoughts and then wanting to respond. Body language, I've spoken about this. The non-verbal cues at times are extremely important. How I am dressed in an interview, how I go to college, how my, and it's important. And in fact, so much so that my son is starting his college, and he's also doing BCom, by the way. He's doing his first year BCom starting next Tuesday. And we've been trying to push him to start getting formal, start getting, let's say, shoes, or go for his haircut and whatnot. And he's very straight away questioning us, both his parents, saying, why do I need a haircut? I, in fact, wanted a highlight in my hair. I have got t-shirts that I want to wear. I've got cool, trendy shoes that I want to wear to college. And we've been trying to tell him that, you know what, your first impression is going to be very, very important. How you carry yourself. Are you well trimmed? Are you sporting an unkempt beard? Uh, do you have a personality which perhaps will be an off-put to the teachers that see you? So a lot of times it's not about who you are. It's also about what is the non-verbal cue that you're giving into the person. See, today, once people get to know you, things change, right? Things change because then they get to know you. But till the time people get to know you, what's very, very important is, how is the body language? How are you carrying yourself? Are you somebody who is uh, respectful of your surroundings, respectful of your professors, of your teachers? Are you somebody who's inquisitive? Are you somebody who's grooming themselves to come across as somebody who really is intent on learning? Right? That becomes important. And last but not the least, be you, because you are one of the kind. What I mean by this is, do not try to be somebody else, right? It's important to get inspired. It's important to get inspired by eminent personalities, by your friends who have done well, by your parents, by your teachers, by your gurus, or whosoever, right? But don't try to be them. I mean, I might want to become, let's say, a character like Dhoni, but if that's something that is not innate in me. I might want to pick up some tips from him of how he carries himself around, but eventually I am me, right? There is nobody else who can replace me. So try and figure out what your strengths are. Try to imbibe some of the good characteristics of personalities that you want to develop, but do not change the core you. Do not change who you really are, because that is not going to help you. Right. So with that, as I've been saying, it's not going to be a one-time event. After listening to me for what, about 45 minutes now, it's not going to change your life. What's going to change your life is a continuous focus on how you want to learn from surroundings around you. It's going to be a destination which will only be arrived after you continuously hone on your skills, after you continuously start pushing towards the success that you want to get for yourself. Right. Now, some of the checklists that I spoke to you about, I'm just going to rush through this. As I said, this is only for yourself. Nobody's going to check whether you have completed or not. But if you complete, it's going to work towards helping you in building a persona that you want to see yourself in. And to me, it will be a success if, even if 50% of you end up doing one or two activities, or if you end up taking at least 2 or 3 objectives from what I wanted to leave you with. One, I spoke to you about the SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. If you create 4 metrics in a white piece of paper in your diary or wherever, and if you don't want to show it, that's okay. If you want to show it, nothing like it. Make a brand new statement. Know where your strengths are, know where your weaknesses are, write down where your opportunities are, and write down where your threats are. If you do that, it'll make it very, very easy for you to develop and build your personality. The second is list down 3 things. And when you're doing your opportunities and your threats and your weaknesses, you will know those areas or which are some of the aspects in your personality that you need to work upon. For me, the most important aspect of my personality 20 years ago was honing my English communication skills. So that was one area. 2 was my ability to impress a group of audience that I have never met, because I was very shy. Third was to be able to demonstrate that confidence that I actually am somebody who's willing to help, because I came across as somebody who was perhaps rude, and that rude attitude only came about from a place of mistrust, from a place where I knew that since I do not know things, I have to act as very, very bossy so that people don't ask me questions. So those are 3 areas that I started working with when I was your age. So for you, it's important to at least figure out 3 or 4 areas that you want to work upon and change in your personality. Now, once you've done that, it's important that you create a list of resources. What can help you? Will talking to a senior person help you? Will finding a mentor help you? Will talking to a senior, or that matter, even talking to your elders in your family? So find out list of resources, or maybe reading a book, or maybe watching a movie, or maybe doing a lot of things. There are tons of materials available now with the advent of AI, and everything is at the fingertips, right? So a lot of resources are available. All that you need to do is identify the right resources which will help you take care of the 3 areas that you want to change in you. Then what we do as human beings is never ever set timelines. You should set realistic timelines for each of these goals. Now, when I say that, find out 3 areas that you want to change, you've also found out which are the resources that will help you, but you have kept it very vague, saying, you know what, Abhi, life has just started. I mean, I have 3 years into the college, and then I will do post graduation. Why am I worried about changing my personality today? I will try and change my personality when I have to go and find a job for myself. That will not happen, right? A personality, as I said, is not going to change in a day, in a month, in a year, in even 10 years. A personality is something that you'll have to keep working on as long as you breathe and as long as you live. So set realistic timelines. And the last and the most important is take action and eat the frog. By eating the frog, I don't mean literally eating the frog. Eating the frog is a concept which translates into saying that do the most difficult job first. So when you get up in the morning, what typically we end up doing is, if the most critical assignment that you have to submit by tomorrow, you will think, you know what, let me complete everything else because this is very important. I want to clear up my head and then do it at the last. That is the worst thing that you can do from a time management perspective. Because you will, by the time you clean up your other jobs, you will not have the mind space to be able to do the most difficult job. So eating the frog can be as disgusting, as difficult, as boring as you can think of. But if you finish that first, the rest of your day becomes easy because you're not mentally tortured. In the same example as I told you, that if your assignment has to be submitted tomorrow and I have 20 other things to do, I'll say, you know what, let me get the vegetables first so that I can keep my mother satisfied. Then let me quickly make a couple of phone calls which I wanted to make. And then in the evening, when my mind is clear, I will make the assignment. Trust me, you will feel very, very let down. You will think, oh God, now there is no time left. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling bored. And the assignment output that will come out at that time is not going to be the best version of you. Instead, if I say everything else can take a back seat, to me, this assignment is the most important job. I will do it first hour in the morning. If you do that, the rest of your day is going to be a cakewalk. And that's what I mean by eating the frog. So with that, I'm going to end my monologue. And any questions that you have, I'll be very, very happy to take those questions. And as I said, being inquisitive is very, very important. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can scan this barcode and you'll be able to follow me, follow some of the tips that I give on LinkedIn. And maybe if there are any questions or anything that you still come up with later in your career, later in whatever you're doing, please feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to kind of mentor you, guide you, and do whatever I can in my space. All right, so over to you. Are there any questions? If you want to unmute yourself, go ahead. If you want to use the chat window to type, please feel free. Okay, the first question is generally the most difficult. So who's going to eat that frog? Of asking the first question, or as I said, I mean, I don't mind you typing the question, and no question is stupid. Okay, I mean, if you guys are taking time to open up, how about me asking you a simple question? Was this informative? Use the chat window to just say yes or no, and I'll be happy to kind of take what you really feel. So if it was decent, and in terms of if you really think that there are some of the things that you liked, which you are going to imbibe in your career from here on, please type yes. I'm happy to hear no as well.
Yes, dear students, if you have any queries and all, you can mention that in the chat box.
Thank you, Harini. I'm not going to thank the others because everybody's calling me sir. So only Harini has to be thanked because she is the only one who said yes. While I know I'm not 20 years old, but I'm not as old as you calling me sir. So please call me Bhavesh. Okay, great. So I mean, I don't know if this is forced, but yeah, now that it was informative, why don't some of you ask me some questions? So good to hear that it was informative. Type your questions if there is anything, or if you want to unmute, please do that. No questions? I'm going to give it maybe another 30 seconds. But I thought there are going to be a lot of questions because last time I remember when I spoke to your seniors, I think I'm told they are in your third year. There were a lot of questions that came. I'm surprised that you guys are not asking questions. I've again shared the LinkedIn link in case if you want to follow me on LinkedIn or maybe ask any questions at a later point in time, please feel free to do so. So Professor Chaitra, I don't think there are any questions. So maybe we can.
Yeah, sure, sir. If anything is there, we'll let you know, sir. We'll contact you.
Sure.
Yeah. It's really a very informative and really a very wonderful session, sir. And hope our students will make a utilize of it in uplifting their career. So now we are at the end of the session. So my sincere gratitude to today's resource person, Mr. Bhavesh Patel, for enlightening us from his knowledge of wisdom. Thank you so much, sir, for your gracious presence and your words.
Thank you all. Have a good Saturday. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. And I take this opportunity to thank Professor Soumya Patel, Principal, Shishajipuram Degree College, Mysuru, for her continuous guidance and constant support. Thank you, madam. My sincere gratitude to Mr. Prajwal Vasistha, ICT Coordinator, for his support. Thank you, sir. And I thank to Mr. Tejasvi, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science, for his technical assistance. Thank you so much, sir. I thank all my dear students for your presence. And our success seems to be connected with action. Successful men keep moving, they make mistakes, but they don't wait. Thank you, one and all. Have a nice day. Before leaving the session, the feedback link will be sent to your class WhatsApp group. Kindly fill the feedback without pain. I, Chaitra, signing off. Have a nice day. Thank you, one and all.
So, Professor Chaitra,